Makes me sad. A few years ago, I had a lot of friends, and now I feel like I have almost no friends. I'm like crushingly lonely. Like yesterday, I got on my computer. I was like, I want to talk to someone. I didn't know what to talk to.
Okay, I got you. This is not just for men. This is for anyone. Because despite the media's obsession with male loneliness crisis, which it is a legit crisis of male loneliness, but a lot of times it's of their own making. I'm not saying it for you guys. I so appreciate men who are talking about this in a really vulnerable way and being so open, because the men who don't are the ones who are stalking me currently online because they have no friends and they just need attention, even if it's like a child literally is like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, so that they get any kind of reaction, because it's better than sitting in silence with themselves. So thank you for making that video, you guys. Also, I know quite a bit about this. This article went viral a few years ago. The title sounds very harsh, but it has a ton of resources on how men can make friends, real friends, long-lasting friends, instead of like hobby-based friends. It's in Harper's Bazaar. Just Google Melanie Hamlet, Harper's Bazaar. This will come up. I also want to mention this book, which I referenced in that article. It's called The Men's Group Manual. Oh, there's birds. This is actually what my husband used to start both of his men's groups. I don't get a commission on that book, but the reason why I highly suggest it is because I actually formed a women's group after I got so jealous of what my husband had created with his men's groups. And we used that book, not like to the T, because women have been socialized to be better at certain aspects of friendship and community, right? That's what patriarchy and all of these systems have done. However, that book did give us tools on how to better hold each other accountable, because unfortunately, one of the things that a lot of women are not so great at, especially white women like myself, who've been socialized to be super passive aggressive and not direct, is to be honest. And so that book gives you tools on how to have honest conversations within a group. The other thing about that book is that I don't just condone any men's groups. There's a lot of men's groups, and actually in that article that I wrote, I interviewed some people, and it just got cut for word count, but there were some people who had stories of men who had been in men's groups that actually made them worse. And these are men's groups that were supposed to be, about community and closeness and stuff. But because they weren't deconstructing patriarchy, they weren't being really vulnerable with each other, they weren't really being honest with each other and holding each other accountable, they actually ended up enabling each other. And that's why a lot of women are terrified of men meeting in groups, because out of that, we often get enschmells. And we're already terrified of them because they're literally us all the time. Or like the ones who are currently stalking me. They got a hold of one of my videos that called them out for selfishness with their hobbies, and now they literally are still threatening me. They're obsessed. So groups of men based on vulnerability and change and unpacking patriarchy, learning all this crap. Yay! Men hanging out to enable each other? No! And just so you know, I've written about being a toxically masculine feminist. I really understand what it's like to live in masculinity, because I worked in the outdoors for so long, and actually became worse than the guys that I worked for. So trust me, I've actually had to learn a lot from men. I wrote this for Outside Magazine, where I talk about it was actually an Outward Bound course with a bunch of teenage boys that taught me just how afraid I was of intimacy, and how I had adopted a lot of toxic masculinity stuff that was ruining my life. And it's bad if teenage boys call you out on being too toxically masculine. I also have a podcast on the Risk podcast called One of the Boys. And in the podcast title of that episode is called Masculinity. If you Google that, it's an hour-long story about this Outward Bound course and how these boys changed my life in terms of helping me understand just how hard it is for them to, or how scary and actually dangerous it is for men to be open with each other. So believe me, I understand. I've never been a man, but I've worked with men, and I've been on the receiving end of male violence my whole life. And yet I have a lot of compassion for men for some reason. And finally, I want to direct you to this amazing podcast by one of my mutuals. I love her so much. I learn so much from her. The podcast is called Friends Forward. Usually talks about women's friendships, which also for any women following me, please go follow her page, her TikTok, her everything. I interviewed for her for an article, and just that one interview with her taught me so much about making friendships, because even at the ripe young age of 45, I still struggle, especially as an immigrant, how to make long-lasting friendships. I've had to start over so many times, and she's brilliant. But this episode, there's two. She interviews me and a bunch of men about male friendships, how important they are, the cost of not having them. I chime in with my own experiences, including how much women suffer when men don't have friends. One of those things being is men get into relationships with women, they don't have friends, and they end up ruining their marriages and their long-term relationships because they put everything on the women in their lives. They turn them into their therapist, their best friend, they're literally everything, even when they're the most progressive of men, and then it blows up in their face, and then they get their hearts broken. One final thing, when my husband and I were dating, at a certain point, I said to him, we were in confinement together, and I was talking to a bunch of my friends. I was doing like karaoke on Zoom and all kinds of stuff to stay connected to people, and he wasn't. And that's when I realized he didn't have enough friends. You know, all the other things, like lots of green flags, but that was a big issue for me. And so I just simply said, I do not see myself in a long-term partnership with a man who doesn't have friends. You've literally read my article. You know how important this is to me. I've done some research on this. It's a non-negotiable for me. So if you want to be with me, you need to work on that. He did. He started one's men's group, and then that was and the men's group also, by the way, very diverse. It's got a guy from the United States who was a former military guy, an Australian, a couple guys from England, my husband's French, one other guy from another country. One of them's bisexual, one of them's a transgender man, one of them is gay. It's a very diverse group. They have so little in common on so many ways, and yet so much, and they learn so much from each other. And my husband has learned he's taught me so much about how to really listen patiently, actively listen, wait my turn, how to be better about communicating things, how to be more honest and genuine, all these things. So that when I got jealous of his, even though I have a lot of friends, I didn't have something like that, I started my own women's group. So this is for anyone who helps. Making friends is really hard. And also you have to make new friends over and over and over again. People move, their situations change, some they have kids, some people and that's totally normal. And Danielle helped me realize that. But friendships are like family, and they are so important for our lives. They're so, so, so important for all of our relationships. And especially under, patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, the number one goal is to get us alone, to feel alone, and be in that individualistic mindset. And that's not what we're supposed to do here. Community, community, community. And friendships is like the bedrock of that. I hope that helps.